Hello, welcome to the Goblins Pockets. I'm not going to laugh on the intro this week. This is serious business. Welcome to the Goblins Pockets, the D&D podcast and show where we tell you what you should be listening to and watching and buying, and it'll probably be D&D related. I'm
Wow.
Ian.
I'm Monica.
That's Monica. Yeah, you know these
intro
intros
just degenerated.
Hey, it's good. We're covering all facets of listener and watcher. Like everyone gets it. Hey, Monica, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
My throat is a little sore, so if you hear me sound today, I said I sound a bit like Roz from Monsters Inc. Wachowski. If you hear me sound like a bit like Roz, it's just because my throat is a bit sore. I apologize, guys.
She's not sick. She was partying too hard. Don't feel sorry for her. We just had this discussion.
I have a constitution of 8. It's true. I really do.
6.
Maybe 6.
Monica's been off to weddings, getting messy and dancing loads and shouting a bunch. So yeah, she might not be talking as much, but we're going to force her to talk because this week we're doing a show and tell episode. And
it's going to be good.
We're each going to bring something hot to the table, so hopefully something you've not checked out. I don't actually know what Monica's bringing. She has told me, but I've completely forgotten because I'm narcissistic and I forget what people bring.
Because it's so self-involved.
Yeah, I know.
So self-involved.
But yeah, I've got something relatively new, and we'll see what you've got. I've got a dice that I'm going to roll.
Me too. We're twinsies. We have the same.
Hey, look!
Dice. Look at that. Twinsies.
Both blue. Look at that. Right. This is. Oh, that's hot. It's pretty good. 18.
Oh, 15.
Ah.
Nice. Look at you, 2 in a row. I don't recognize you anymore.
Right? So this week I am going to be reviewing a podcast. Shock horror. We do a lot of podcasts on this show, but
there's a lot of D&D podcasts out there, guys.
And there are a lot of D&D podcasts. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I've got a D&D podcast, tell us about it. Like, we'll review it. I found one the other day where I'm like, this is different, and I'll always say I give it at least 7 hours. Like, I think that's fair.
It's fair. It's very fair.
And sometimes that's 7 episodes, sometimes it's 2 episodes, depends on the format. But yeah, I give things a decent run. And this is something that I've given this one. I think I'm on episode 22. And this is currently one of the ones I fall back to quite often. And this podcast is called Popcorn is called Reckless Attack. Have you heard of this one?
I have not. I've heard of the Reckless Attack rule in D&D, but not the Reckless Attack podcast.
Well,
Please tell me more.
None of them are barbarians, so
okay.
But yeah, to your point, naming a D&D podcast these days is tricky because, as you said, everything to do with D20s is done, everything to do with initiative, they're all done. So this one's called Reckless Attack. As I said, I've listened to 22 episodes. Of the main story, there are actually only 37 episodes, so it's quite new. I think they started it up in September last year, so they're coming up to 1 year. So it must have been like post-COVID, I guess, or when everything started.
I think that would be like COVID times.
Yeah, it's all recorded in person, so they're all in the same room, and it's really fun. It's really. You've got DM, you've got 4 players of varying degrees of abilities. I think they have all played before. The dynamic's quite sweet. You've got twin brothers are 2 of the players, which can get quite confusing when you're listening to them describe things. You're like, hang on, is that
Do they sound really alike?
Oh yeah, super alike. Okay. Like if they weren't, when they're not role playing, they're super different. Like one of them's got a bit of a thing to his player character's voice, so when it's his player character. But when it's the actual players discussing, it can get a bit confusing, especially if you're listening to it as a podcast and it is a podcast. but that's, yeah, it's fine.
Is it also in video format or is it just
I don't
audio?
think so. No, it's all
Okay.
theatre of the mind, and I'm pretty sure it's all just a podcast.
Okay. So yeah, so you just have to start honing in on who's who quite
Yeah, that's
quickly.
it. And then I think it's Dave. So that's David and Jonathan. I think David's wife is another one of the players. And then they've got their friend Steve, who they've played with for years. And he's a bit older. I think he just things like he's in a 20-year campaign he's been in.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's been playing for like, when he started playing, I wasn't even born. So
That's
it's
incredible.
like he's been playing a long time. So there's a nice wealth of experience. But they're all, I think they've all played. Nobody came to this podcast as a complete
as a new player.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think some of them might have been new to 5e, which, or, you know, recent to 5e. So there's a little bit of an adjustment there. But for the most part, you're not getting any kind of rule hiccups or anything like that. In a nutshell, the kind of premise of it is it feels very, it's homebrew. But it feels very high fantasy, typical high fantasy, maybe kind of leaning towards some kind of steampunkier.
Ooh, okay.
There's some technology in it. You know, some D&D's campaigns completely avoid it. You know, if you're going full on Tolkien, there's no technology.
There's no guns, there's no.
That's it. Whereas this has definitely got a bit of some mechanisms. You know, your artificer is one of the key NPCs is an artificer. So like there's some of that. So you know, it's really good fun. I think the thing that I like about this one is it feels oddly PG-13. Okay. Well, it's not. They're all rated as explicit, but if anybody's listening to this and they've got younger players or they've got younger family members that who just crave D&D content, like something like Critical Role, it's definitely adult. There's a lot of
there's
a lot of
gore and swearing and
Whereas this, every episode is explicit, but you could listen to 5 episodes without hearing a swear word anywhere. Like, it
toes the line, but it's acceptable.
I would say it's very teen appropriate, and I'm not trying to be ageist, and like I know that most teens these days are quite comfortable saying, you know, using bad language. That's not what's bad these days. But if you've got a younger player that you know, whether it's your kid, your nephew, whatever, this is a podcast I would put in front of them. And I'd be like, there might be a couple of fuckle buggers in there sometimes, but it's for the most part, it's pretty PG. The tonally, nothing has been like hyper scary or anything like that. And man, they've just got great chemistry. I was going to
ask, how's the chemistry of the group?
As a 5-some, it sounds like a lot of them have known each other for a long time. Like I say, you've got twin brothers, you've got a wife, you've got friends of a long time. It sounds like they were playing a campaign prior to starting this campaign. So they're learned, they're experienced, they know what they're doing, they're rolling in straight away with knowledge. So it's very it's true to life. One of my notes here is, and I don't know if I mean this in particularly as a bad thing, but the first day of real world, like of in-game first day is about 10 episodes. So
okay.
And you know, and these are hour to an hour and a half episodes. So it's like
nearly true to time. Like
this is it. It feels almost true to real life. Do you know what I mean? Like I've played in D&D campaigns where you get stuck for many a session, or you know, a couple of sessions at least, and these are 4 or 5 hour games that we're playing, and nothing moves forward. So it feels very true to life. One of the other things I've written, which if that sounded bad to you, I would say get past it, because it's very much that kind of, it feels like the early levels kind of way of doing things. It's like kind of explaining and bedding in, and then they reach the first destination, and now things are a bit more like, okay, on this day this happens, on this day this happens. So it's started to move along a bit more now.
It's the setup usually takes a bit of time. You know, you're getting like the characters building a synergy, like the players know each other very well, but it takes some time to gel the party together. So I think that makes sense to just have like an intense day of in-play time to just kind of figure out why these characters will be together in the first place.
I think that would usually put me off, but I think what hooked me in with this is the format of the first episode. It was unique to any podcast I've heard. So they do a little bit of intro, a little bit of role playing, and then they get into some combat quite early on. And the combat, the DM runs it purely cinematic, pure RP combat. And it is just so you can get a flavor for the kind of characters. Like the characters are technically using abilities that they have, like but the DM's just like, yeah, like how do you do it? Don't worry about hitting and damage and numbers. Like you're like it's, you know, you're aware they're going to defeat these things, but the way they go in and the way they describe it, it's really tight. I'm not going to ruin it.
It sounds like an intro sequence. You know, it sounds like
like a
you know, there's
scene.
like the intro sequence, a cut scene where there's like the zoom into every character, like Badlands type of style. Where you have the names,
or like any like
cleric.
It's like a Japanese RPG sort of cut scene like episode, and it's really cool. And it just it makes you like feel instantly connected to them without it bogging down with the rules and stuff. It is very rules correct. Like everything's very like the DM's very good. Like there's not I've not really caught myself going, actually that's not how that rule like with some so if you're into like that kind of easier listening, like I find it very easy to listen to, and just I can just do episode after episode after episode.
That is a high compliment coming from you, because usually you find like the way that you listen to podcasts, I'm not saying you're hypercritical, but
I am.
But it's really beautiful to hear you saying it just flows. It's just really nice to just go from one episode to another. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and like I said, it's all theatre of the mind, which is I've just started up a new campaign. We're actually having our first session this Saturday. And one of the kind of rules I'm setting myself, and I've told my players, they know about this, is that I'm only going to really be using maps for combat.
Yeah.
So everything else is going to be theatre of the mind. When we enter a city, I'm not going to put down a city map and go, in this sector is an inn, and in this sector, like I'm not going to do it. Basically, I'm going to explain the type of city and like the scale of it, or the village,
the vibe,
and the vibe exactly, and let the players ask, is this there, is that there, and like, and hope that works. And that and when the DM's describing things, this is some really like wholesome good examples of how to set a scene and sell combat, and they're all very descriptive combat kind of players as well. So we talked about this in the past, those kind of podcasts that are made as shows with maps and minis and that sort of thing, and then converted into podcasts, and the shows that are made for podcasts, and this one is made for podcasts, like something like the Adventure Zone. And it's really good. And some of the nice things they do as well is between episodes, once it gets going a bit, they do these episodes called Reckless a Talk instead of a Attack, and they're interviews. So the first 4 or 5 are interviewing the DM and players. So you can just, you know, if you're into the kind of background of these people, you can go and listen to what they were doing before they were doing this podcast and that sort of thing. I've listened to a few of those. They're good fun. It's, you know, it's nice to get to know the people.
Know them a bit better.
Yeah, but then they've got a Patreon account, which has got their kind of behind the scenes, where they talk about the actual campaign, and you know, more I don't actually subscribe, but I get the impression it's more to do with like the mechanics, or you know, what their plans are for their character builds and all that sort of thing.
A bit more nitty-gritty details of like plans and how
that's it.
set up the campaign.
So I think with all of that intel, there's like 54 episodes, like if you looked at it on Spotify, but for the most part there's only 37 actual like campaign episodes. I don't know if I've done a great job of explaining it.
I think you gave the vibe. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
So when we discuss podcasts, we've talked before about the joys of having a new player, right? Someone who's never played before, because generally they will think outside the box in a way that someone who's like a seasoned player probably has forgotten to do, because they're kind of bogged down by their like stats and abilities and so and so. It seems like this group is really well gelled. Do you think that there is a good trade-off between like chemistry, but also like creative gameplay, or do you think that it's more conservative?
I think if I simplified that to like, is there a difference between new players and veteran players, which all of these guys are? I'd say good veteran players like these guys are will always make sure that everybody is included in the story, and that is something that I think these four are really good at. Is nobody's really ever just role playing by themselves. It's always collaborative, and it's always inclusive of the other people at the table. There's lots of checking in, like like, oh, what do you think, this character? And those are great examples of how to be a good player and that sort of thing. Like they're really good at including one another and making it a shared story, because it does feel very homebrew. It doesn't feel staged or scripted or anything like that. It is very like the players have no idea what's going on. They're learning as they go. They're asking lots of questions, and the DM is happy to go. Another plus for it is great sound quality from the start, which really
good.
helps.
Always helps.
Yeah, it really does. And I've got one slight thing, and this might just be me, but one of the characters has a voice, and it's a bit grating. And
voices and characters, hit or miss, really.
Yeah, and luckily it kind of puts a bit of strain on them, I think, so they don't talk a great deal in character, which is good. But it's they've got a really good balance of speaking in character and saying my character does X, and it just feels it's I guess if I had to categorize this type of podcast, it's almost like one of those fly on the wall podcasts. You feel like you're sitting in on somebody's like home game, and in a good way. It's a good example of a home game.
That's beautiful. And as you were saying, especially for young people, to give, like, if someone wants to be a young player, it can give them a really good idea of what a game could be.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, there's nothing stopping young people going out and listening to whatever the fuck they want to listen to. But if you are a D&D parent or something that feels like they want to introduce their kids to good examples of things, listen to a few episodes of this and see what I mean, because like I said, there is some adult stuff in there, but for the most part, it's pretty PG.
It's a nice change from the murder hobo trope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's very little like straight up murder for the sake of it. There's very few like sex jokes or like anything like that. The kind of adult content is pretty low key.
Nice.
And I would recommend it.
Nice. So I'm thinking you're giving it quite a high score.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 17.
Ooh, that's good.
Quite high for me, I think. I can't really mark it down. It's more of a comparative score. I listened to the latest episode of Dungeons and Daddies the other day, and had me in stitches. And that's my 19s, So it's it doesn't quite hit me as a my favorite kind of podcast, but it is very good. It's very well done.
Nice.
Great chemistry, great DM. It's shaping up to be like a fun campaign and that kind of thing. It's got a good balance of everything.
And it's making you want to listen, which I think is great.
This is it. Like we review D&D content. That's what we do here at the Goblins Pocket. And sometimes I'm just getting through things so that I can
because you have to.
I've got a few podcasts on the back burner that I'm like, right, I need to review these and like give my opinion on these, and some of them just like I can take it or leave it, like, and others like this one, it's like, oh, actually I will go back to that when I've got free time, or I'm not sure what I'm going to be listening to on the next dog walk. I'll usually put this on.
Nice. So it's a great recommendation from you.
I would get on that. So Reckless Attack, go check it out.
Thank you so much. Well, I look forward to the link. We're going to leave links in the description as always, because I want to listen to it as well. And before we move on to my contribution to the episode, let's take a little break.
Bye.
Cool. See you soon.
Hey, got an idea for something we should review? Or been thinking of buying something for your D&D collection, but the price has put you off? Why not join our Patreon? For just £4 a month, you'll get a say on what content we review, and when we buy something using Patreon contributions, we'll raffle it off to our patrons. So, you'll be in with a chance of winning the thing you wanted us to review anyway. Good, right? So go find us on Patreon at The Goblins Pockets. And of course, all new supporters get a shout out on the latest episode.
Right, let's go
Because
back in.
we love you.
And we're back.
Hello.
Hi, Monica. It's
Welcome
your
back.
turn. You're going to talk
It
about
is my turn.
some of our favorite things.
It is, because Ian just remembered what I'm going to talk about.
I did.
It's going to be great. It's great. It is wonderful. So today, it's a bit of a tangent, as in both Ian and I agree that in order to enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, both as a player, DM, or someone who consumes content, you don't have to pay a penny, right? Like there's so much stuff out there that you can listen to, which is free and it's great, and you should absolutely get into that. Today, however, I'm going to talk about something that is behind a paywall that is absolutely worth the money.
Oh no.
So much.
Oh no.
And you may think, is it a book? Is it a release? Is it an adventure? No, it's a podcast. It is a mini series from Dungeons and Daddies, who we have talked about before as one of our all-time favorite podcasts, called Sons and Sonsability. Did you say Sense and Sensibility, Monica? No, I did not. I said Sons and Sonsability, because it is kind of a, wild RPG created by the DM, Anthony Bird, and I should have remembered her name. No, Amanda Schuckman, that's her name. Yes, right. Who co-DM'd this episode with Anthony.
So it's not D&D.
It is not D&D. It is a custom-made RPG with the idea of a Regency era bachelorette type. Sounds really weird, like a Mr. Darcy kind of situation. Eligible women bachelorettes trying to find a suitable match in the Regency era, kind of like Bridgerton meets D&D. Okay. I suppose it's a weird description. However,
sell me. Keep going.
I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna sell it. So the setup is 4 players. The 4 players are the 4 players in Dungeons and Daddies, who are members of a family who need to find a suitable match for each of them. And a rival family, all played by the co-DM Amanda Schuckman, beautifully played, may I say. Like, she is a voice actress. She is just a comedic genius. Honestly, great. It's wonderful. And their kind of rivalry in trying to, how can I say, to be a catch in this weird ton system of trying to find a suitable husband. You may think, oh, that sounds boring. It really isn't. It is wild to the most extreme. Like, if you've ever thought, I don't know how 3 grown men would sound playing Regency era bachelorettes. Well, this is the show for you guys. It is hilarious.
That is a question I often ask myself.
Yes, it is a question we all ask ourselves. They all embody some kind of classic hilarious trope from the era, like a sickly woman, the woman with the big bosoms and whatever, the klutz who's a bit silly, and they basically have to compete for the affection of 4 gentlemen who are based in the world of Dungeons and Daddies. You will recognize some of the surnames of the people who have appeared later on in Dungeons and Daddies. It starts off weird, it ends wild. It just goes off the rails very quickly. I was in stitches listening to the first episode, so much so that, knowing that Ian doesn't necessarily feel like he wants to contribute to Patreon, I said, do it for this, for this mini series. It's 3 episodes for a total of maybe 4 hours. I think maybe they're like an hour and a half each, more or less. Something, an hour to an hour and a half. And you get to a point where it becomes so enjoyable for the players that they completely forget the RPG system.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. It sounds like I know keeping these guys on the rails, even playing D&D, like every now and again a role will be asked for, but for the most part, yeah,
It's
like
just
I'm sure I could
comedic.
find an episode of Dungeons and Daddies where literally there is no D&D mechanic if I tried to. Yeah.
And this is the same. Like it
Yeah.
starts off with a mechanic that you can kind of understand. Like it's actually quite a straightforward mechanic in terms of like marriage potential, and everyone has a secret. And if you discover someone's secret, then damage to their MP marriage potential is double. Like there is a logic to it that's quite like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Halfway through the second episode, it's like, wait, what are we doing again? What, wait, what? Are we still trying to find husbands? Like it just gets a little wild. It just gets a little wild. But I couldn't recommend it enough. It's just very, very funny.
I've got a question. As somebody who is reluctant to part with his gold, I have not ever signed up to a Patreon of any sort. How do you what's the access? Do you listen to these through Patreon?
Yes. So basically, when you sign up for their Patreon, you get an RSS feed that you can connect to whatever streaming podcast streaming platform you listen to. I personally am a weird person who doesn't use Apple Podcast. I use Pocket Cast. Don't ask me why. My boyfriend introduced me to it eons ago, and I'm reticent to change. Therefore, I'm stuck. And through the link, you are able to access the Patreon podcasts, which are only accessible through this link. And the Patreon podcasts are all the main campaign without any adverts, so you can listen to ad-free versions of the podcast, as well as a number of things that are related to the tiers or to like the level of contribution you're making to the podcast. There is a fuck ton of content. So you get access to Talking Daddies, which is the show where they just discuss the campaign and kind of, the behind the scenes, which is, to be honest, it's so funny. I like it just as much as the main campaign because they're just very funny people. They answer some questions. And then they have like one shots or like mini campaigns as stretch goals. And this was a stretch goal. They've done many. They've done, a Star Wars themed one, a Call of Cthulhu one, which was great. But I like them, but that's not necessarily why I contribute to the Patreon. I contribute to the Patreon because I want to support these guys because they made me pee while I was walking they made me pee myself a little laughing as I was walking in Bristol once. So, I feel like that deserves some praise.
Let's pay these people that made me wet my pants.
Therefore, I should give them some money. This mini campaign, no, go listen to it. Like it's worth it. If you don't have, like, obviously if you have the availability to do it, if you don't, but you still want to listen to, you can contribute for a couple of months and then or a month, because now they've all been released. They were released from May until now. And they're all available. Just give them some money. Just binge listen to these podcasts, and then come back to Patreon whenever you have the ability to do so, at least later point. But it is such a good example of being a seasoned DM and someone who kind of works in games more generally. Anthony has a really good understanding of game mechanics, and they created something which is fun. However, this is such a good example of how RPing doesn't necessarily have to be about the mechanics. It can just be about, you just want to have a setting where it's a Regency era for women trying to get married. Do it.
I mean, this is
use the mechanics as just like a vague idea of stuff that you can do. But then when the ball starts rolling and you forget about the mechanics, just have fun, just for the shits and giggles.
We talked about this previously. It's kind of the difference between an example of a home game and good entertainment, and it sounds like this falls more into the good entertainment kind of category. So the fact is that if you like D&D and you've listened to their podcast before or something similar, you're probably going to enjoy this. You're
going to love it. So, you're absolutely going to love it. And I will say this is similar to some home games that I've been in the past, where you park the main storyline for a sec. You park the game because you had this idea of, I want to do this really stupid thing. I want to do this thing. It's going to be really funny. The whole table's going to laugh. And, we can all participate in this shits and giggles adventure for a session, and then it's fine. Tomorrow we wake up after a long rest and we go back to being serious adventurers and doing whatever it is that we need doing. Serious adventures. But for today, we're just going to do a drinking contest with no rules and just swindle the whole town. You know, like, why not? This is kind of like this is kind of the vibe. The vibe is just run with it if you want, if the whole table's up for it, and the whole table in that case is absolutely up for it. You're going to love it. You're just going to absolutely enjoy it.
So yeah, I mean, we talk about stuff that you have to pay money for on this podcast too. You know, there is content that we review, that like books and stuff, and Monica believes this is something worth your hard-earned gold.
Yeah, I do because also there is a really fine line. I think there is, you have to consider things like your own personal means, which are absolutely valid. Like, you know, everybody has the ability to pay for a Patreon subscription, and I respect that completely. At the same time, you want to value those artists that bring content in your life that makes you happy. And I started paying for their Patreon during the pandemic when we were all down in the dumps, and their content just made me happy. Like their content just made me cheerful.
That's it.
So this is something that I 100% suggest. You know, if you like their style, if you want to just go for it for a month or two, do it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. You're gonna pee your pants while listening to like Will doing a sickly lady voice is one of the highlights of the show. Beth doing klutzy woman voice is amazing. It's just so good. It's just like there's just little pearls of wonderfulness.
I think I might have to check it out. Yeah, I think you convinced me. Yeah, well, thanks for that. Oh yeah, how would you rate it? Give it as a standalone.
The standalone thing. The first episode for me was a nat 20, I will say.
Really?
Yes. Like it was so good that I was refreshing my feed every day after that to get the second episode.
Yeah.
Then it gets a little bit wilder and it's harder to follow, and, you know, maybe goes to an 18 after that. But the first episode got me hooked so much, just because the whole setup, Amanda Schuckman was incredible. The dynamic, the back and forth, it was just so good. The first episode was a nat 20 for me. And guys, if you listen to it and you don't agree, feel free to come at me on Instagram. I'm happy to have a little chat about it. We all have different tastes, but, you know, tell me what you guys think, and, you know, tell me if I was right or not.
So that's pretty high praise there from Monica.
It is.
And on that point of coming at us, don't get aggressive.
Come at us, guys.
But if you've got questions, concerns, or anything, comments, you know, get in touch with us.
Non-aggressive questions.
Also, well, you know, it depends. You know, you might strongly disagree with something we say. You know, we're probably not going to fight you about it, but you know, tell us your opinion. Another thing, we are also looking for guests. So if you have some D&D content that you want to tell the world about, come and tell us about it. Like, we would love to talk to you about it. We're going to reach out to some of the other things that we reviewed in the past, the things that we strongly believe in, and see if any of the creators want to talk to us about those as well. But yeah, tell us about your thing. It can be small. Maybe you're a crafter, you make something small, and you know, then
maybe you design the little one shot, like whatever it is.
We'd love to hear about it. So get in touch with us. Monica, you like to tell everyone the contact details, don't you? You love that bit.
That makes me sound like a dog.
I just know that you like to do it. So
I do.
You keep
Please get in touch. Send us an email at thegoblinspockets@gmail.com. See, today I can't even speak because you made me self-conscious about it. Or send us a DM at the Goblins Pockets on Instagram. And, you know, we have a Patreon, guys. Just come on board.
Oh, yeah. Patreon as well. We currently only have a couple of Patreon members, and this is going to be good for them, because in the next couple of weeks, the Radiant Citadel comes out from Wizards of the Coast, and yeah, we're gonna buy a copy.
We're gonna raffle it off to them.
We're gonna review it, and then we're gonna raffle it off to them. And there's currently a 50% like a 50-50 chance of them winning this book. So
jump on board now if you want the Radiant Citadel.
Yeah, might be a steal. Yeah, that's it. You put in £4, and there's a strong chance you're gonna win a book worth
35.
Yeah, exactly. So check us out, and yeah, all those details are available on our Instagram and on this podcast on the description. So yeah, thanks for listening, and
thank you for listening, and see you guys
soon.
next week.
Yeah, see you then. Bye.
Bye.